You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Going back to the top story, the G20 virtual summit hosted by India. Mr. Sanjay Bhattacharya joins us from New Delhi. Mr. Bhattacharya is a former Indian ambassador to Switzerland, Turkey and Egypt. Ambassador Bhattacharya, welcome to DD India News Hour. Now, first off the mark, what did you make of the Indian Prime Minister's speeches, the opening remarks and the concluding remarks? What stood out for you in his two speeches?
Of course, I think this is a very special moment for the G20 movement, because this is the first time that we've had a second summit in the course of the same presidency.
Right.
And of course, as was outlined at the outset by Prime Minister, the idea was to consolidate the progress made and review some of the developments since the Leaders Summit last time. And of course, there have been some very important steps and developments that have happened, particularly on the development agenda, the Israel-Hamas issue, and of course, a range of other issues that we wish to review before we hand over the presidency to Brazil. And Prime Minister referred to both these in his remarks. And I think this now sets the stage for a very successful presidency by India, in which we have provided two very key elements. The first was that it is possible to gain consensus. And the second was that we have sent out a message of hope when there are so many challenges, as Prime Minister himself put out.
Ambassador Bhattacharya, as you rightly mentioned in your opening intervention there, it's the first time that India as a host hosted two G20 summits in one calendar year. Now, the idea, we are told, was to take stock of the progress made so far and to prepare for the future. Do you think India has raised the bar?
I think it has, and in many ways it is quite natural for India to do so, because right from the outset, you would recall at the time when we were part of the G8 plus mechanism, which then subsequently became the G20, India's voice was always very important. And today, in recent years, we've seen that India has grown as a nation that not only has greater ability, but the greater willingness to lead on several of these global issues. The championing of the cause of the global south was one of those. The championing of the cause of having a fair representation in global institutions and global governance was another one. To look at the issue of development, sustainable development, and link it up with issues like debt financing, climate finance was another one, and to bring consensus, as I had mentioned earlier, on very critical geostrategic political issues that had escaped the movement earlier.
I want to dwell a little bit more on this particular issue. Now, looking in the rearview mirror, Ambassador Bhattacharya, as it were, how do you assess or analyze India's G20 presidency, especially when it comes to focusing the G20 attention on issues such as the global south, sustainable development, or even equitable growth?
So, as you know, in the past, the G20 had really addressed on economic stability, financial stability issues. When the entry of India and other members came in, the issue of growth and development started becoming more crucial, as also the role and importance of the governance of international multilateral institutions. Now, these are very necessary for developing countries like ours, which are very aspirational, but we don't always have a full share in the on the global table in terms of the voice that we need to represent. And I think over the years, India, along with other partners, particularly from the global south, has been pushing this particular cause. And I think in this particular presidency, we've seen great success. And it is with some satisfaction and with some hope that the subsequent presidencies of Brazil and South Africa, and we were earlier with Indonesia, that this global south contingent of the G20 will be able to carry this flag further, because there was a a dichotomy, if I may say, that was coming about between the OECD countries and the countries of the Global South. And I think in many ways, in terms of institution, in terms of priorities, in terms of the focus, and in terms of some of the concrete actions that have been outlined, we have been able to do course correction on that.
Ambassador Bhattacharya, one major outcome from the New Delhi summit was the inclusion of the African Union as a G20 member. For the benefit of viewers joining this broadcast, what does the inclusion of the AU as a G20 member mean for the bloc as a whole?
So firstly, I think what has happened is that we had seen for a long time that multilateral institutions and even plurilateral ones did not give adequate representation to developing countries, to emerging economies. And particular in this was the absence of the Global South in decision-making positions on the big table where economic, financial issues were being discussed. Africa in particular was a continent that was almost forgotten. And we often forgot that Africa is really the continent of the future. It has huge resources, demography is favorable, it has resolved many of its old conflicts within. And so this is a continent that we need to work much more collaboratively with. And therefore the inclusion of the African Union, and you recall that Prime Minister made a personal pitch with every member of the G20 writing personally to the heads of state or government of the G20 members to get Africa in, the African Union. And I think the fact that he took this initiative so seriously led to African Union becoming a member on the very first day. And therefore, when the New Delhi summit happened, the African Union was there right from the outset, and the chair of the African Union was welcomed at that particular event. So what this does is it extends the opportunities that are available, not only for the developing world of the Global South, but also for further collaborations between the North and the South. It also means that the new paradigm of the Indo-Pacific, which is becoming every day much more dominant and important, has this connect with the continent of Africa. Prime Minister had said that, we believe in this concept of Sagar, which links the Indian and the Pacific Oceans to the continent of Africa. And so the salience of Africa has become much more important. And this is a very, very welcome development.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Ambassador Bhattacharya, thank you once again for joining us and sharing your insights with our viewers at home and abroad. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.